It was a chilly morning in January 2005 in a remote execution ground nestled under the shadow of a mountain in Heilongjiang, China. A crowd of nearly 100 people gathered, their breaths visible in the frosty air, eyes fixed on a young woman barely 22 with long black hair and a face drained of life. Her name was Li Mei, and she'd been convicted of a chilling crime, the cold-blooded murder of her ex-boyfriend. As the executioner raised his weapon, the crowd held its breath. The shot rang out and Li Mei collapsed. The verdict was final, or so they thought. Minutes later at the crematorium, a scream shattered the silence. "She's alive!" someone shouted. Li Mei, declared dead, was sitting up on the stretcher, blood trickling from her head, her eyes wide with terror, unable to speak, but nodding frantically. The scene was chaos. Her family wailed, the victim's father roared for justice, and onlookers stood frozen, grappling with the impossible. How could a woman survive a point-blank shot? Was this a miracle or something darker? This is no ghost story, but a twisted case that gripped China. A tale of love turned lethal, hidden motives, and a betrayal so shocking, it left a community reeling. I can't help but wonder, what could drive someone so young to commit such a calculated act? Was it heartbreak, greed, or something we'll never fully understand? Today, we unravel one of Heilongjiang's most haunting crimes, piecing together the clues that led to this surreal moment at the execution ground. How did a seemingly ordinary romance spiral into murder, and what pushed Li Mei to cross that unthinkable line? In the quiet, rugged hills of Heilongjiang, China, the summer of 2004 was about to be shattered by a grim discovery. On July 8th, a local villager named Zhang Wei was scouring the base of a mountain for firewood when he stumbled across a horrific sight, a man's body lying face down, ravaged by days of exposure. The corpse was in an advanced state of decomposition, its bones shattered, surrounded by swarms of flies. Zhang, shaken to his core, didn't dare approach. Instead, he shouted for help, his voice echoing in the desolate wilderness. But this was a remote area, no one heard him. Forcing himself to stay calm, Zhang hurried to the nearest village and alerted the authorities. The police from Fangzheng County arrived swiftly, cordoning off the scene at the mountain's base. Forensic experts were called in, their faces grim as they examined the remains under the stifling heat. The victim was a young man estimated to be 25-27 years old, about 5'9" tall. His body bore the marks of a brutal end, every major bone was fractured, and the face was unrecognizable, marred by decay and trauma. The coroner's report estimated he'd been dead for 14-15 days, placing the time of death around June 23rd or 24. Most chillingly, toxicology results revealed the cause: poisoning by rat poison, a slow and agonizing way to die. The police found no identification, no wallet, no clues to who this man was. The scene suggested a fall from a great height, but was it an accident, a suicide, or something far worse? I can't help but imagine the dread Zhang Wei must have felt stumbling across that scene. You might think a fall like that points to suicide, but the poison complicated everything. Why would someone ingest rat poison and then leap from a cliff? The police wondered the same, leaning toward a darker possibility: murder. As news of the discovery spread, the small community of Fangzheng County buzzed with unease. The police issued a public appeal describing the victim's clothing height and approximate age, hoping someone would come forward. 2 days later, a man named Chen Guofeng, a local father, arrived at the station, his face pale with worry. He hadn't heard from his son, Chen Haoran, in weeks. Haoran, 25, was a quiet, hard-working typist at a local company. He lived alone in a modest rented room near his workplace, returning home to his parents only on weekends. Lately, he'd been distant, nursing a broken heart after a recent breakup. When Chen read the police description in the local paper, a sinking feeling hit him. It matched Haoran perfectly. He tried calling his son, but the phone went unanswered. Calls to Haoran's colleagues revealed he hadn't shown up to work in days. No one had reported him missing, assuming he was visiting family or caught up in work. DNA testing confirmed the worst: the body was indeed Chen Haoran. His parents were devastated, their only son gone in such a brutal way. I can't help but wonder how they must have felt learning their child had been lying at the foot of that mountain for weeks. The police dug deeper, piecing together Hao Ran's final days. His best friend Liu Qiang recalled seeing him on June 23rd, the day he likely died. Over lunch, Hao Ran had been unusually cheerful, smiling to himself. Liu pressed him, but Hao Ran only said, "I'll tell you later." Then, at 12:45 p.m., Hao Ran got a phone call that changed his demeanor. He grew excited, borrowed 500 yuan from Liu, promising to repay it, and rushed off saying he had somewhere to be. Liu overheard a woman's voice on the call but couldn't make out details. That was the last time anyone saw Hao Ran alive. What was so urgent that Hao Ran left in such a hurry? Who was on the other end of that call? The answers would unravel a story of love betrayal and a motive so cold it's hard to fathom. Let's follow the investigation to see how the police closed in on the truth. The discovery of Chen Hao's body at the foot of a Heilongjiang mountain in July 2004 sent ripples of unease through Fangzheng County. The police faced a daunting task: a heavily decomposed body, no identification, and a death that could be suicide or something far more sinister. The forensic team's findings set the tone for the investigation. The cause of death was clear rat poison, a brutal toxin that would have caused excruciating pain before Chen Hao's heart finally stopped. The shattered bones suggested a fall from the cliffs above, but the absence of personal items at the scene raised red flags. Was this a planned act to obscure his identity? I can't help but wonder how someone ends up so far from help with no trace of who they were. The first challenge was identifying the victim. With the face unrecognizable, the police relied on physical characteristics: height of 1.76 meters, approximate age, and clothing details, and issued a public appeal through local media. 2 days later, Chen Bao's anguished visit to the station and subsequent DNA tests confirmed the body was his son, Chen Hao. This breakthrough shifted the focus to Hao's final days. Police interviewed his friend Liu Qiang, who recounted Hao's upbeat demeanor on June 23rd, the day he vanished. Liu's mention of a mysterious phone call at 12:45 p.m., which prompted Hao to borrow money and rush off, became a critical lead. The call came from an untraceable prepaid SIM card, a detail that made investigators suspicious. Who uses a burner phone unless they're hiding something, you might think, and the police were asking the same question. The investigation deepened. Hao's rented room was searched, but no suicide note or personal belongings offered clues. Forensic analysis confirmed the poison's presence, but the lack of a container at the scene suggested it wasn't self-administered. The police explored Hao's relationships, learning of his recent breakup with Li Mei, a local salon owner. Chen Bao shared that Hao had been emotionally fragile, even attempting suicide years earlier after a rejection. This history led some officers to lean towards suicide, but Liu Qiang's testimony that Hao was excited, not despairing, challenged that theory. The prepaid SIM call gnawed at investigators. They traced Hao's phone records, confirming the call, but hitting a dead end on the caller's identity. It was a fleeting clue in a case full of unresolved questions. Police canvassed Hao's workplace and social circle. Co-workers described him as reliable but reserved, reeling from his breakup. The investigation took a meticulous turn, with officers combing the mountain for evidence. No signs of a struggle were found, but the body's position and injuries suggested it was moved, post-mortem possibly pushed from the cliff. This detail tilted the scales toward foul play. If Hao took his own life, why was there no poison container? Why the fall? The lead investigator reportedly mused. The team's persistence in chasing the phone call and Hao's relationships began to unravel a darker truth, pointing towards someone close to him with a hidden motive. As the investigation into Chen Hao's death deepened in Fangzheng County, Heilongjiang, the police began to unravel a tangled web of relationships and motives. The mysterious phone call from a prepaid SIM card, the rat poison, and the absence of a suicide note pointed toward foul play. The focus shifted to those closest to Chen Hao, particularly his ex-girlfriend Li Mei, a 22-year-old hair salon owner with a complicated personal life. I can't help but wonder, how does a romance sour so badly that it ends in a body at the bottom of a cliff? Let's dive into the suspects and the clues that emerged, keeping in mind that no one was guilty until proven so in court. Li Mei was the first person of interest. Chen Hao's father Chen Bao revealed that their breakup had left Hao devastated. Mei, known for her striking beauty and charisma, ran a thriving salon that attracted a loyal male clientele. Witnesses described her as charming, but calculating, often entangled in multiple relationships. During her time with Hao, she reportedly maintained close ties with other men, leading to frequent arguments. Mei initiated the breakup, citing irreconcilable differences. When questioned, she confirmed the split, but claimed she'd moved on with a new partner, Wang Jun, and had no contact with Hao since. Her alibi: she and Wang were on a trip to Changchun, Jilin province on June 23rd, the day Hao disappeared. Wang corroborated her story, providing receipts and travel records. But something about Mei's demeanor, cool and detached, raised suspicions. The police dug deeper into Hao's social circle. Liu Changhao's friend mentioned a man named Zhao Feng, who allegedly had a grudge against Hao. According to a mutual acquaintance, Zhao was infatuated with Mei and resented Hao for being in her life. Zhao admitted to knowing Hao and disliking him, but he denied any violent encounters. His story shifted when pressed. He claimed his rivalry was now with Wang Junmei's new partner, not Hao. The inconsistencies were troubling, but Zhao's alibi for June 23rd working at a local factory was verified by co-workers. You might think Zhao's jealousy made him a prime suspect, but here's the twist: his story didn't fully align with another lead. That lead came from Mei herself. She pointed police toward a woman, Sun Li, who allegedly had unrequited feelings for Hao. Sun Mei claimed was pursued by a man named Yang Tao, who was jealous of Hao's presence in her life. Yang, when questioned, denied knowing Sun and insisted he had no reason to harm Hao. The conflicting stories: Sun's alleged affection, Yang's denial, and Zhao's vague admissions created a maze of motives. The police were frustrated, sensing someone was hiding the truth. Then a break came. Neighbors reported Mei had packed a bag and fled Fangzheng shortly after her first police interview. This raised red flags. Why run if you have nothing to hide? After a 2-day manhunt, police found Mei hiding in Shenzhen, far from Heilongjiang. A search of her belongings revealed a bombshell: the prepaid SIM card used to call Hao on June 23rd was in her phone. Confronted, Mei initially confessed to luring Hao to the mountain, admitting to a heated confrontation but denying murder. She quickly recanted, alleging Wang Jun orchestrated the crime and paid her to flee. Wang's airtight alibi, a full day at a steam center verified by staff, disproved her claim. A search of Mei's salon uncovered rat poison containers in her trash, linking her directly to the murder weapon. As the evidence mounted, Mei's story unraveled, painting a picture of a calculated act driven by a hidden motive. But what could push someone to such extremes? The police were closing in, but the full truth was still just out of reach. By late 2004, the twisted case of Chen Hao's death in Fangzheng County, Heilongjiang, reached its climax in a courtroom packed with tension. Li Mei, the 22-year-old salon owner and prime suspect, faced charges of intentional homicide. The trial, held on December 28, 2004, drew a crowd of locals, including Chen Hao's grieving parents seeking justice for their son. The prosecution built a meticulous case, relying on forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and Mei's own contradictory statements. I can't help but wonder how someone so young could sit so calmly as the weight of such a crime was laid bare. The prosecution presented damning evidence. Rat poison containers found in Mei's salon matched the toxin in Hao's body. The prepaid SIM card recovered from Mei's phone was confirmed as the one used to call Hao on June 23rd, luring him to the mountain. Witnesses, including Hao's friend Liu Qiang, testified to his upbeat mood that day, undermining any suicide theory. Mei's initial confession, though, retracted, detailed how she tricked Hao into meeting her, poisoned him with a laced drink, and pushed his body off the cliff to conceal the crime. She later claimed her new partner Wang Jun orchestrated the murder, but his verified alibi spending June 23rd at a steam center cleared him. The prosecution argued May acted alone, driven by a desire to eliminate Hao, who had been persistently trying to reconcile after their breakup. May's defense was shaky. She admitted to the phone call but insisted the meeting was harmless, claiming Hao's death was accidental or self-inflicted. The court rejected this, citing the absence of a poison container at the scene and the deliberate nature of the act. The judge emphasized May's flight to Shenzhen as evidence of guilt. After hours of deliberation, the verdict was unanimous: guilty of intentional homicide. May was sentenced to death and ordered to pay 100,000 yuan, roughly 14,000 USD, to Hao's family. The courtroom was silent save for the muffled sobs of Chen Bao, Hao's father. The execution was set for January 1, 2005, at a public site near a Fangzheng mountain. Nearly 100 people gathered, including Hao's family, who demanded justice, and curious onlookers drawn to the case's notoriety. May, pale and frail, was led to the execution ground. A single shot rang out and she collapsed, declared dead by officials. But at the crematorium, the unthinkable happened. May stirred, sitting up with blood dripping from her head, unable to speak, but nodding in response to questions. The crowd was stunned. Her parents pleaded for mercy, but the law was clear. A second execution was carried out immediately with 2 shots to ensure finality. Forensic experts later explained that the first shot had grazed her brain, causing a rare state of clinical death reversed by the jolting transport to the crematorium. The trial and execution closed a chapter, but the scars remained. May's calculated act was undeniable, yet the surreal revival left many questioning the process. Some people say justice was served, but the finality of it all felt heavy. The court's ruling stood as a stark reminder: no motive, however hidden, could escape the law's reach. The case of Chen Hao's murder and Li Mei's execution left an indelible mark on Fangzheng County, Heilongjiang, and beyond. For Chen Hao's family, the loss was a wound that would never heal. His father, Chen Bao, and mother spent their days in a fog of grief, haunted by the image of their son's broken body at the foot of that mountain. Chen Bao's anguished cry at the execution ground, "Let me kill her myself," echoed the raw pain of a father who'd lost his only child. Hao's mother, meanwhile, was said to linger at the village gate, calling his name as if he might return. I can't help but wonder how a family moves forward when justice feels so hollow. Li Mei's family faced their own torment. Her parents, ordinary workers from a struggling background, stood by helplessly as their daughter's life unraveled. At the crematorium, her father's sobs, as he arranged for her final moments to be dignified, spoke to a love that persisted despite her actions. The surreal moment of May's brief revival, a medical anomaly caused by a misfired shot, sparked debates across China. Some saw it as a tragic quirk, others a grim twist in a case already steeped in horror. The necessity of a second execution, while legally mandated, left even hardened onlookers uneasy. You might think justice was clear-cut, but here's the twist. The human cost on both sides blurred the lines of right and wrong. The public reaction was electric. In 2005, Chinese media dubbed the case one of the most twisted in recent memory, not just for the murder, but for the execution's bizarre aftermath. Online forums buzzed with speculation about May's motives. Was it greed fueled by her lavish lifestyle, or was it desperation to escape Hao's persistent attempts to reconcile? Her calculated use of rat poison and a prepaid SIM card pointed to a chilling premeditation, yet her youth and beauty led some to question if she'd been misjudged. The case sparked broader conversations about toxic relationships and the dangers of unchecked ambition. May's salon, once a local hotspot, became a symbol of her manipulative charm, drawing both fascination and revulsion. For me, this case raises haunting questions about how love can curdle into something so dark. May's actions weren't born in a vacuum. She grew up craving a life beyond her means, using her charisma to climb a precarious social ladder. Hao, meanwhile, was a dreamer pouring his heart into a relationship that ultimately betrayed him. Some people say Mei was a monster, but I wonder if she was also a product of her circumstances chasing a fantasy that spiraled out of control. The tragedy lies in the wreckage left behind two families, shattered, a community divided, and unresolved questions about what could have been. The case reminds us that hidden motives can lurk behind even the most ordinary faces. It's a stark lesson in the consequences of manipulation and the fragility of trust. As we reflect on this story, one question lingers. What drives someone to cross that line from heartbreak to murder? Share your thoughts. Below, how do you see this case and what does it say about the choices we make?